I'm going to start off this lesson by testing out some changes that I was mulling over. So I'm going to duplicate this folder just so I can compare what I'm about to do to what I have. So the first thing I want to do is use the move tool to change the shape of the back of the head. These changes are happening because I like what I'm seeing from the front view, but as far as the silhouette of the head is concerned, but the profile is not strong for me. And then I'm going to make sure I have like a sharper, a steeper fall from his forehead to his nose. And then the last thing I want to try out is to shorten the snout. So I'm going to go scale, center, this, and flatten the snout a bit. Let's see if it will benefit from just a little bit more of a upward slope. And then I'm going to try to play with this jaw a bit more. Start making his snout fit into his face better before I start welding. Looks like we might end up with a bigger chin than I thought. Let's see what it feels like when it's blending into it better. How deep I want his eyes to be inset in his face. I'll play around and see what. The mass of the eye here, that sort of, and start also a tempo for him like I did for her. Not too pronounced, just something initially to get started off with. And so I'm gonna put it side by side and just see if it was these are worthy changes from the front and profile view. I just want to play around with some new looks before I get into completing his head. So I'm gonna look at it for a while and proceed with is going to be the final, or what is the better choice. So I can't really tell what's happening with these segmented pieces, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to weld everything together and start playing with the shapes as a singular piece to see what's gonna work. And go with the latest changes. I'll keep the ears separate for now. I'll go merge folder. That's all of those guys. I'll do a Dynamesh. Yeah, that seems to be enough. Of 144. I'm gonna see how well this thing is going to work on the snout. I'll use the clay buildup and I'll change my alpha to alpha 6. I want to see how this snout is going to transition into the face. It's harder to tell what's happening when they're separate like that. I'm going to try a more smooth transition first. See how that functions. Put a limiter on where the corner of the mouth would be at the default. So I can sort of smooth this out. yeah, this looks like it'll work. Let's get this cheek welling correct. Make sure that this is flowing into the bridge of the nose correctly. Get this little outline. And the other big thing that I really want to make sure comes through is that jaw. It's becoming very clear that a nice, prominent line is working better than, just in my head, it's working better than this little swoop. Or maybe the swoop might work too, but let me check that to see if that is the case. Grab the move tool, see if now the swoop looks really cool. I'll keep it for now. It's a relatively easy change to make later. It's really not working. I want this a little bit more. The Damien standard and Alt. Before I start making any additional changes to what's happening with this lower face, I'm gonna put in the eyes so I can start seeing how this thing works as a collective, and then start making the bigger changes. So I'm going to append a sphere like I did with her. I'm going to rotate it, hold down shift and rotate it so that the pole is looking at the camera, so I can gauge the center of the eye better and get the sphere in his head correctly. If you remember from the last lesson, the eye, this sphere really helps us figure out how to wrap the skull and meat of the head around the eye area. Activate symmetry. Looks like it doesn't like that, so I'm going to move it to the other side. Activate symmetry, mirror and weld. Yeah, so this center, this pole here is where I mentioned the center of your pupil should be. Well, not should, but it's a good gauge just to make sure that you have your eye centered correctly. So I'm going to do the same thing and that I did with her. This might be, let me scale it down first. I don't like it colliding like that. Turn on local symmetry so I can scale it. And mirror and weld again. And mirror and weld. Oh, sorry, I have to turn off local symmetry. So mirror and weld. Alright, I'm going to try to get where the bulge of his cornea should be, so I'll take the move tool. So, turn on poly. Let's try to hold down Alt and pull. And then just to give us something, gives us a feel of the bulge of the cornea. Yeah, looks really weird. Alright, so now let me start moving it into position, finding what the correct distance should be, how the flesh should wrap around the eye. It's time to move things around to get out of this really weird phase. Alright, I think I'm gonna try to bring the eyes down a little bit, but I'll do it with Transpose Master. So I'm gonna go Z plugin, Transpose Master, T-Pose Mesh. Before the lids come in, I just want to see how this is gonna work. And I'm gonna grab the entire eye region, activate symmetry. And then blur. And then start moving the eye down. Yeah, that seems like it was contributing to some of the uncanniness. Right now he looks quite cross-eyed, but that'll work itself out as we begin to put in more stuff. And I think also his eyes, let me return the changes, C plugin, T-Pose subtract. And these eyes need to be a lot more inside the head. Maybe about that much. So now we can probably start shaving. Start getting that inset. And use trim dynamic to shave this a bit. Eyes might be a little too big. Starting to look a little childlike. And I mentioned I was going for a more serious look this time around. Let's work this position a bit more. Save this ridge. I think that this nose should transition a lot smoother than it does. So if I have to tone down these cheeks, really count on the fur to do all that extension. It looks really weird. All right, I'm gonna extract the eyelids because this is too weird for me to see what's happening. So get his eyelids in there. Select the eyes. Divide them a few times so I can get a better resolution mask. Okay, I'm going to extract that 0.002. That's a good thickness. I'm going to go with a little bit higher than that, 0.004. Accept. I'll do the same for the bottom. Extract, accept. Okay, so now we have the eyelids in and can start working our way to something. I'm going to Z remesh both of them. at 5K, just to get something lower resolution to play around with. Do the same thing here, Z mesh. Those might be too high. I'm gonna go with like a 2K Z mesh. Same thing here, 2K. Alright, so let me get him out of this phase where he looks sleep deprived and really awkward. Make sure I get rid of this body so I can focus. Lower. Delete hidden. Alright, I'm going to start cleaning up this eye region. Take the move tool and make sure that I have a good shape, a nice straight shape, traveling up the bridge. So just hint at a nice brow, straight brow. There's some design in there, and then this nose has exceeded its it's supposed to be around, I don't know why I took it that far. It's really supposed to be around here where it stops, and this part of it needs to at least point towards the eye. So let me try to make sure I limit it from going. So this is the extent to where it's going to be. And then let me start making this bottom eyelid do the right thing. I'm going to take it and invert and blur mask and make sure that it's pointing down. This should be pointing down and out. Very thick eyelids. Make sure that this is meeting up with top the way it's supposed to. Have that. Almond like feel, and then that's still wrong because I forgot to make it point outwards. So I'm going to go here, grab my lasso tool, invert and blur. And get the manipulator over there so that it can point outward into the face. The top is supposed to be doing something similar too. And I want to get that so I can get the line. I'm going to help point this thing in the right location. Yeah, this little hook here. I just want to see it. Flatten this out so I can see where I'm going to terminate this. Alright, so I want this line just to come all the way here, and go meet up with the corner of the eye, like that. That's what I was doing. I want to find this line, get a nice gesture coming from here. Focus on making sure that connection is always there. It makes it look good. So that cleans that up a little bit, and then here, I'm gonna build up a little bit more. And get rid of that grizzly feel over there. To make sure this form connects well. And to look too old. And more importantly, I'm going to make sure that the surface is nice and groomable. So I'm going to exaggerate the anatomy a lot, and then I'll dial back. To smooth things out. And he's starting to look a lot less weirder. I wonder if I simulate the little region of flesh that exists here, whether it will look good. Interesting. Move this eye up. See if a slant will work. Yeah, it's starting to look a lot less weirder. Be careful with this big mandible. I'm going to try to get rid of this eye bag and get a more straighter cheek line. So I'm going to build around here. Working because it still looks like a bag. It's a nice smooth. This is not an older character, and yeah. So that's way, and I'm going to emphasize this dig. So the gut of the eye is gonna go here, so I'm gonna prepare for that. Get that out of the way in preparation for that. I feel like I should make this swoop higher. go just above the hair. Okay. It's starting to look a lot less weird. I'm going to take a shot at reducing the volume of the top of the snout. I'm going to duplicate this. I just want to shave it a little bit and prepare to try to transition it into the face better. I just want to see which looks better. Both are animatable, but I just want to see what looks good. See if transitioning this makes for a better result. Change the material to see what's happening. Get rid of this. It was a bit too gaunt. It works. This top area is feeling too grizzly. Eventually I'm gonna get something that works, but this I think it's looking better. Outline this because I like the shape here that I'm seeing. Next thing I'm going to evaluate these cheeks to see what needs to be done, whether they can be left like this or changes need to be made. After looking at it for a while, there are 4 changes I want to make. The first and biggest one is these cheeks. This volume is going to be the responsibility of the fur. So I'm going to go with a better head shape. I don't need this protruding like this. Take this brush and I'm going to take the move to topological and end up with a more reasonable head shape. Smooth things out. And build a little volume. Build a lot of volume to make this transition smooth. I'll get many opportunities to really polish the shape of this thing as the topology becomes more simpler. More specifically, when I convert to subdivision levels, then I could really play. De-emphasize this temple region, get a nice smooth result. Yeah, you can see a hint of it. All right, then the next thing I'm going to change is how, in perspective, the head slopes backwards. I feel like I could end up with a more interesting, sort of like a plane break that transitions it into the top. It feels better in perspective. If it doesn't, it's an easy change later. The next thing I'm going to change is this mouth line. It's really confusing me. It's supposed to be a nice smooth result like this. These artifacts are not helping me to visualize what's going to be happening over there. Preparing this head to transition into the neck properly. This is just a proxy body, so the real body's up top there, so I don't want to touch anything on this proxy because I have to go do it on the real body. Just make sure I have a nice clean transition. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is further simplify this eyelid geometry. It's too dense, and I want a simplification that will allow for all the peaks and valleys and squiggly shapes to disappear. I just want nice, pristine, simpler shapes. So I'm going to go with a 0.5 Z remesh, and I can go lower. I'll go maybe 0.1. Yeah, and then truly simplifies it. It makes it a lot easier to move around. So I'll do the same over here, 0.1. Okay, that's simpler. And I want to make sure that the top eyelid sits on top of the bottom one, so that this one will be tucked in. Yeah, now that I look at this forehead, I realize maybe I might have been a little too ambitious with that slope. Let me see if it looks. I can tone it down maybe. Yeah, that might have been too much. On the slope. Check these cheeks. This jaw feels very uninteresting. I'm gonna try a more plainer, sharp angle if it doesn't work. Yeah, I might need to step away from the head and just observe it a bit. Some of these changes might not have been the best. Let me look at this shape and look with a more tapered transition into the top of the head. This feels very fairly weird head shape. Yeah, I'm going to tone it down. Thought I wanted a plain break there, but I think that might not be a smart move. Clean up this transition. All right, I'm going to start working on the ears, cleaning up these ears so I can see what it's looking like as a collective before I continue making changes. If there's something wrong, it will reveal itself as everything starts to come together, just like how some of the mistakes revealed themselves when the eyelids were done. All right, I'm going to start cleaning up the ears. So take this, duplicate it. It may be too thick at the base. It doesn't feel too rabbit-like, but it looks cool to me, but I think I should tone down this, just play around a bit and make sure I go with that swelling at about a third way down. And I'm going to start actually fleshing out the lip, which this is just too thick. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to start going with something that is, might need to divide so I can using the Damien standard to cut a more reasonable lip. I want it to be somewhat thick. I think it looks cool. And it has some, this part looks a lot better when it's folded in on itself. So I'm gonna preserve that look and dig in. Again, I'll make sure I have a nice shape. But I mentioned before, all this is about silhouette. Making sure I get some really successful silhouettes, because the secondary and tertiary detail of this piece all comes from fur. I just have to make sure the foundation is nice. And dig into this some more. Added one more subdivision. Need to start shaping this. And I'm also going to try to get a more tapered look. It looks cool. That feels good. And this is all in preparation to merge it at the base to prepare with something thicker to go into the head. That's how these are usually built. End up with some cartilage that feels a little like that. Like a mound. Hint at that shape a little bit more. This one is already sort of emphasized a bit. starting to look better. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna turn on back face masking with this so I don't end up making a mess. Try to shoot for the correct, a reasonable thickness that will allow subsurface scattering to behave correctly. Right? If I make it too thick, I won't get that redness in the ear when I apply the material. Or I'd have to crank up some settings to unreasonable numbers to get proper subsurface scattering. So I'm going to try to go for a reasonable thickness. Not necessarily realistic, but just reasonable thickness. Stylized things like this look good when the lips are just even a little bit more thicker than usual. Feels good. It's just one look though. You could go with super thin and it would also work. But for me, this type of exaggeration, I like it because it helps you to distinguish the lip a lot. It helps the viewer to distinguish the lip a lot clearer. I'm gonna keep finessing this thing even after I've changed it to subdivision levels, just to get some in the best shapes possible. I may have gone too far with this inset. Looks good from the back, but I'll see. Ultimately, when it's welded, I have to make it blend into the head correctly, and I'm gonna do that soon. I'm going to duplicate this head. You need to really tone down these cheeks. See what happens if with the shape of the sides to get a better silhouette. All right, take a look at this a bit and see how to proceed. I just realized two issues. One of them is he feels like his dentures fell out because of this additional information over here. It feels really weird. It feels like that character in Family Guy. Looks like he's an older individual who's lost his teeth. So I gotta fix that. But the bigger issue is that the jaw is not prominent enough. It doesn't feel, character doesn't feel masculine enough. So I'm going to push the jaw. Grabbing the lasso. Blurring. I'm gonna start moving it down to get a more prominent jaw. I'm gonna fix this. Get rid of all those weird artifacts. Eventually, when his mouth is opened shortly, I'll polish this a bit. There's something about him that's looks really weird. It's not connecting. I have to keep looking at it some more. And also this shape is incorrect. Doesn't feel nice at all, so I'm gonna make sure it swells correctly. If you ever do get a glimpse of it here, it should look really nice. And taper correctly. Same for the top, and go down a few subdivision levels so I can get a better averaging. Start with a nice default shape. Alright, I'll take a look at it. See what's making it so weird. Just hint at that jawline. Maybe that extended jaw just heading towards the back just doesn't make it feel good at all in profile. Just one of the issues, not be wrong with it. Alright, I'll take a look at it and come back, see what's done. I have to find something to lose that gumminess. That was part of the problem. It still looked like an older set of lips. Okay, so I'm realizing that one of the things that's making him feel a little weird, which really doesn't matter, because this region is going to be groomed. It's going to be covered more in fur, I will be doing things to make it him look more hair-like or more rabbit-like. Perhaps have the groom define this part of the snout, but just for my sake, I'm going to put some form here to define this top area, because I think for a hair, you need that to sell it in that realm. Kind of need that, these shapes over here, so I'm going to put it in there just for now. And if anything, it will even help with the grooming for me to make sure I'm keeping track of this shape. Make sure that you use what I've defined here as how to groom it, the direction to groom it in. And another thing I think is it should come down like that. That feels better. Cut it down. Okay. I'm going to come here in 2D and start trying to envision what this thing, where I'm heading with this. So I'm going to start putting in some of the shapes that I'll be going for at the grooming stage. I already did that one over there. And I want to try this just to make sure I'm heading in the right direction. Take a darker one and define this better. So the neck would have fur like that, and then these should look like this from the front view. And just to help me see what connected better, I'm going to just treat this as one solid mass so I can see. Feels like. The thing I'm noticing is I need this shape to sell it. That shape at the top snout. So I wanna there's these evil eyes. Let's do something to see. Get these shapes more prevalent with a darker. Alright, so that's enough sketching. There are a few other things that I want to change, which are very prominent things in rabbit characters. And another thing I temporarily forgot about is that he's gonna have whiskers, and those elements missing, those whiskers and the discoloration of where the whiskers are emanating from, they contribute to it not feeling right or not feeling like a rabbit. And also for most rabbits, there's like a melanated part like this. They might have the white fur here, but there's a sort of melanation that outlines this snout. Like, it's not perfect. Sometimes it's out here, sometimes it's really snug on this line, but it really helps to sell the rabbit look. So I realized that it's not something I can actually do over here to help sell this at the moment. So I just have to keep focusing on creating something that's going to be a base that is going to be groomed to achieve the final result. But I'm going to do a few other things that I think I need to see here to feel like this is heading in the right direction. And one of them is also to emphasize this bottom part here for like it feels more like what you expect to see with CG animals, right? This isolation of this part, and that will also be emphasized with the help of the groom. And then yet another thing is this dip, like the top lip overlaps over the bottom, so there's somewhat of a dip there, right? So these things help to really sell it, take it over the edge. So I think I like it as is. And let me show you some of the rabbit characters I just Googled and I was taking a look at. And you see that the discoloration, that melanation helps outline, and that's what helps it make it look like a rabbit. That melanation around there, and in the areas where it's not there, the artists are definitely outlining the snout, right? And that's something that's needed. It's not all the time. But over here, this person did not do that. But it's still a cool look. There's no hard and fast rules. You just have to look at what will work or not work for what you're doing. Here, there's a little bit of an emphasis of the snout, but this artist decided not to go with an overemphasis of it. So it just depends on what you're shooting for. But I'm looking forward to doing something like this, but I would also like to have several different options for the fur, and some of them would be a singular color, but it'd be nice to create a version where there's melanation that outlines the snout. I'm going to fix a shape that's feeling wrong. I gotta make sure that every single line that you draw is producing an interesting a good shape. And this over here, this dip from the corner of the eye down, this is very horrible from a design standpoint. So I'm going to take this and make sure that this line is producing an interesting sweeping curve. It is just the start of trying to polish it. Little things like this sometimes make you feel like you're heading in the wrong direction and you don't know what's wrong. And so it's good to like just pay attention and repair them as you go. Otherwise you'll be moving a whole bunch of things that you shouldn't be moving, attempting to fix what you believe is wrong, but it looks like you have not pinpointed what about it is wrong. So I'm gonna go around and fix all these little weird hicks so I can be moving towards welding everything together and taking it to completion. The connection to the ear to the head is going to be really smooth, and I'm going to have an ear canal, so I'm looking forward to that. But before we get there, I just need to make sure that this is working in every angle, because it's looking a little sloppy. And as I mentioned before, when I get to subdivision levels, I'll have a lot of opportunity to finesse the shape and get a successful shape with the final topology. And it's good to start working towards it now. Yeah, there's a rabbit feel. When the eyelids are welded shortly, I'll deal with this top area. I don't want this. This isn't really real. You wouldn't have your entire eye, unless you have your eye half closed, you wouldn't be able to see the entire lid like this. So I might sculpt what is more realistic, but I'll be careful to leave enough, because I need enough to be able to simulate blinking at rig time. And if you cover too much of the top lid, then you aren't able to put in the geometry you need over there to be able to get enough of it to pull down for a blink. So I might leave this cushion. All right, it's time to weld the ears, the eyelids, and the head, and take this thing to completion. So what I'm going to do is put the eyelids and all the things I want to weld into a folder. And I'm going to take these eyelids, and before I proceed with them, I want to subdivide them so that they're about the same resolution as this. I don't want to do too much smoothing. So that's 2 subdivision levels is about what is needed. And then I'm going to go merge folder, and once I have a unified piece, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to Dynamesh the piece. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to isolate this. First hit auto group, and then I'll isolate just this piece and try to push back the eye bag because it's just too close. Let me undo that, turn on symmetry, and then push the eye bag in. Just to clear this super thick eyelid. That's a good starting point. Smooth result a little bit. And that's about a good amount of clearance. Push a little bit more. So that's good. Duplicate that. And now look for my Dynamesh value that I need. I'm gonna leave this closed dot to get, actually I'll leave it open first so that it gives you less polygons if it's not enough. If you crank this up and it's not enough, you can turn on this dot. So I'm gonna go Dynamesh. Let me test what I have. Yeah, this is good. It's a good place to start with. All right, the first thing I'm going to focus on is these ears. Unify these ears. I want to make sure they blend into the head properly. I'm going to start there. Get a nice transition. Start using. Actually, let me build up a bit more. Let me get a nice transition there. I'll do the same on this side. I'll do some smoothing here. I'm going to hack in here to create a canal, an ear canal. Not a real one, just enough that it catches a good amount of occlusion. Not going that deep. There's going to be a groom here, so I have to be careful not to go too deep and make things difficult for myself at the grooming stage. keep working to blend this thing into the head. Some good shapes. Some more smoothing. If this was a actually, I think I'm going to do it anyway. I was going to bypass doing a mound here that better blends the ears into the head. I think it will be good to do it. And then a nice transition. Feel a lot more organic, and I'm going to do something like that too for this bottom side here to have like nice, a better transitioning of the ear cartilage, look more unified. Feels good. I'm going to do something like that too on the top here. Nice little transition. If I was not going to put fur on it, I'd make some folds here. I definitely don't need them. I just want a nice smooth surface so I can have the fur not have a difficult time figuring out how it has to point based off of the normal of the surface it's being shooting from. The cartilage here I'm going to make a lot thicker. As you go closer to the skull, you do have a lot thicker forms. For most animals with these really big ears, or any ear size larger than a human's. I'm going to turn back face is already on, just continue this building. Damien standard, crease lazy mouse. Try to emphasize this outline a lot better. Okay, now this here, I feel like the shape very important. You have to have a nice little gesture change the color. Yeah, some of it looks weird, so I'll be adjusting it a lot to lose whatever weirdness there is. Blend this transition better. To clean up this front area a bit. Change the color so I can see a little bit better. When I resurface this, I'll get a good averaging and it will fix that. Continually trying to improve the shape. Standard. Reinforce that line. Make sure this gesture blends well into the mass. Now I'm going to clean up these eyelids. I'll isolate this part of the head just so I can focus on it and nothing else. Smooth transition. Start hinting at how this transitions into the face. It's more human-like, just like hers. Now this create the connection between the top and the bottom eyelid. It's a really thick eyelid that I created, so I have to make sure it feels good. And I'm digging to here a bit before I put in the lacrimal. Just want a good connection. This out. Make sure this transition feels right. And this established plain break. Now before I proceed, I'm going to put a lacrimal in there. So I'll pen the sphere, scale it down. Push it in there. I'm gonna diamond mesh it at a low number so it's malleable. It's gonna be a little different from hyper-realistic one because of how the corner of the eye feeds into the nose. So. Activate symmetry, mirror and weld. Get it to the other side. I'm going to leave this cushion here. I'm going to really need it to get something that I can more easily use to produce a blinkable final mesh. I'm going to continue this gestural line here. And this one too. These are the places that will not receive as much fur. It'd be really thin, less dense, significantly less dense. I'm going to emphasize this plane break here. Smoothing this one. Okay, next I'm going to extract the nose and open the mouth in preparation to create the teeth. Let me make sure this feels good. Feels a little jaggedy. I'm going to extract his nose because it gives me a separate piece that I can pump more topology in to work with, rather than try to create his nostrils on this mesh. First, let me divide it to get a little bit more resolution. And I can go in here and start detailing, but I don't like doing that. I like to extract something, and it also gives me a very nice edge when I merge it back in. This is something I did with her. Sometimes I like to leave that nose separate mesh for us. But in this case, they're going to be merged back to the characters. I'm going to extract at 0.002. I'll accept that, and I'll run a smooth operation. Go under deformation and run smooth. And do some manual smoothing myself. And then I'll just start stepping down with the Z remesher until I get a nice piece. I'll go to 1, I'll go to 0.5, I'll go to 0.2. This helps to produce some very nice clean topology. I'm gonna shave it to bevel it. So I'll bevel it, do a little bit of shaping. If there's something good, I can start dividing it again. Keep dividing it till I have enough to create the nostril detail that I want. I'm going to duplicate this, start. Move this down a bit. Use a Damien standard to start shaving away at the nostril. And to reduce the radius, it's a little too much. ahead and keep pushing in to help create that gaping crevice, and just build up what would be the lip. Yeah. Alright, I'm going to merge it back to the mass and finish detailing it. Create a new folder. Merge folder. Clean this a bit. Made somewhat of a mess. Okay, I'm going to dynamesh it. I'll start putting some of these in the trash because it's getting crowded here. And delete lower. Mesh. It's not enough. I'm going to go a little higher. Okay, it's better. This is really not. It's really not necessary for. In some cases, it's not necessary to separate like this. I just like to do it because it allows me to play around and add more refined detail on the separate piece. But it's definitely not something that's needed. It's something I'm used to. When you have enough, when you dynamesh at a high level, it stitches really nicely and produces a nice rim rather than trying to do it by hand. Yeah. So it's fairly clean. I'm going to merge it into the top of the lip. Looks like you can pull the shape out a bit. Feels like there's not enough nostril. force this line. Keep pushing at this nostril. All right, now I'm going to prepare a little gape, a little inset for the extraction I'm about to do. Well, not extraction, a deletion. I'm about to delete a few polygons to create a temporary mouth crevice. So I'm just going to prepare for it with the Danian standard. Alright, so it's time to delete that slither of geometry over there. So I'm going to turn on wireframe and mask. Okay, it's a little harder to see because it's less geometry, so I'm going to divide it. Have a better mask. Okay, so now when I go group masked, yes, it gives me a nice little slither of geometry, and I will delete lower. I don't need it. And I'll isolate this slither and go, sure I'm good. Check to make sure there were no other poly groups anywhere. Sometimes they can be there. And go delete hidden. So that's gone. And now I can start with his teeth. So with his teeth, I'm not going to recreate a teeth and a tongue for him. I'm going to reuse hers. I'm going to make the necessary modifications needed to match this character. She has these sharp canines. He's not gonna have that. He's gonna have more rabbit-like teeth. So let me go get the teeth resource from her. So this is her folder of her tongue and teeth. So I'm going to go Z plugin, go subtool master, copy folder, and then go to him, and go Z plugin and paste folder. Okay. So I'm gonna have a bit of a challenge with him because of how his mouth is shaped. These are not gonna fit in perfectly. I might need to make some modifications to the mouth, but I don't think so yet. He is definitely going to have an overhang. The top teeth are going to go over the bottom. I think that will look cool and allow the rabbit buck teeth to look cooler when they're sitting over the bottom teeth. But it's not going to be too big. I don't want him to look too cartoonish, but I have a plan and I'm going to get to it shortly. So first I'm going to move it into position. I'm going to go transpose set. It's going to allow me to move everything. So this is about location. Turn it off. And I want to see where it is in his mouth. So if I go like this, yeah, it seems to have fit really well. All of this would be the thickness of his lips. It fit surprisingly well. I didn't think it was going to fit this well. It goes in really well. Yeah, it's perfect. I don't think it needs to I need to make any major adjustment. All right, let me start by hiding his head and deleting those canines. Turn off the transparency. I'm going to delete these canines. Select them. Oh, they're a separate piece of geometry, so I can get rid of them. So I'm going to select them. Go delete, delete. Okay, so what I'm going to do is fill in this gap that I deleted the canine from with another molar, one of these molars that I created. But actually first let me separate this central piece because that's going to be used to create the front teeth. So I'm going to go, actually first before I do that, I'm going to free subdivision levels, and then I'm going to isolate this and split hidden, and I should be able to unfreeze, and it should give me my subdivision levels back here and here. So I'll do the same for the bottom. I'm going to free subdivision levels, isolate this central part, go split hidden, unfreeze to get my subdivisions back, and freeze here. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here, look at the poly frame, and I'll isolate this one at the closest to the core or closest to the front, and then I'm going to move it. I'm going to hold down control. Actually, I can't do that. This is another thing that I would have to free subdivision levels for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete the lower subdivision level. I'll have to reconstruct them for this piece. Turn off the line and duplicate another molar. All right. And I may, let me see if this is possible. If I may be able to reconstruct the subdivision level. So I'm going to go reconstruct. Yep, I can. So it'll allow me to reconstruct. So that's good. I get to keep my subdivision levels. So I'll do the same thing here. Delete lower, turn off line, isolate the one closest to the center. Go control drag to make a copy of it, and then just reconstruct my subdivision levels. All right, I'm gonna hide this tongue so I can pay attention to what needs to be done. First, I need to make sure that this gum is accommodating the new tooth. And make sure that this top one is doing the same here. Now to create the rabbit teeth, my plan for this is to dynamesh the whole thing. I'm going to create a copy of it, duplicate, and I'm going to dynamesh it. I'll do that, undo that, delete lower, dynamesh. That's too low. Okay, that should be enough. And I'm going to give it that feel that Judy Hopps has in Zootopia, but I don't want it too rounded, but I do want it to be separated from the molar that's next to it. So go like that, I'm going to treat this as a singular tooth. The split is going to be here. And since it's going to be singular piece, I have to weld it together. Keep building to make it one tooth. Use the move tool, turn it into one tooth. Give it a bit of a dip. Separate it a little. Judy's is it's a swooping curve. I don't want too much of a swoop. I don't want it to look too cartoony. So I'm gonna go with this instead. And I'm gonna make these gums accommodate this tooth. So it acts like it has only one root now. Divide it. Do some filing. Sharpen it a bit. And emphasize the separation so it feels like a single tooth. Okay, and I'm also going to make it so that this tooth is just a little bit more taller, so I get a nice tapering from the front to the extremities. Like that. Make sure there's a nice little separation here. Might need to let it hang a little bit lower. I'll keep changing this till it feels good. Alright, I'm going to do something similar to the bottom. So I'll take the bottom teeth and duplicate it. And then I'll delete lower and dynamesh it. And work on turning this into a singular tooth. Do some build up. So, and give it the same treatment of shaving. I'll find out shortly how well this thing will work when he's smiling. Okay. So similarly, make sure there's somewhat of a little bit of a gap. And then here, I'll just start adjusting this to accommodate singular tooth. Tone this gumminess down. Give it a little bit more volume. Make a better shape. Nice swooping shape. A bulby upper part that swoops down. Just like the sides were created like that. The molars on the side. Makes for some interesting design. Okay, I think this should be good. Okay, so just like with her, in order to check how well the teeth worked, I had to create expressions. So that's what's about to happen. I'm going to get ready to create expressions, have him smile, and I'll find something else, sort of a snarl, just to see how well the teeth are going to work and how well expressions will pair with the teeth in there. Let me turn on transparency to see what it's looking like. Well, it's not bad, but those expressions will let me know what has to be fixed, if anything. I'm noticing some minor adjustments that I could be making. Increase this overhang just by a little. Meaning that the gums would have to come forward. A little bit. Give this molar a more interesting shape. Make sure that it's swooping down. All right. Moving on to the expressions for real this time. I'm going to reserve any changes that need to be made until I see what the expressions look like. All right, so it's time to create the expressions that I'm going to use to test the head sculpt. These are the two expressions I'm going to use. I picked them because they show a lot of teeth. The first one is from Hanzo AI, and the second one is from TB Choi. You can find both of them on Instagram. This is Hanzo AI. This one is a more recent one he did. And that's his name. I'll put it in the description. And this is TB Choi. She's a really cool concept artist. She does a lot of facial expressions and a lot of sketches. So you can check them out to see their cool artworks. I'm going to start by creating a copy of the teeth and the tongue for this expression phase. All I'm going to do is turn on the tongue, and with all the pieces of the teeth on, I'm going to go merge folder, and that just creates a copy of the teeth and the tongue for me to play with. Whatever changes I do on this, I'll go back and extend on the real teeth if I make any changes. If this is not a good design after creating the expressions, I'm going to create, like I did for her, a lower resolution version that's a little bit easier to manipulate. So I'm going to duplicate this. the wireframe mode and create a version at say 5K. So I'll Z-remesh this. That did not work out too well. I might have to go with a higher resolution. So I'm going to go with a 10K instead. Looks like it's still having problems resolving this area of the mouth. So what I'm going to do is reduce. Usually when this is happening, it's because it's just too much resolution from Dynamesh and it can't handle it. So I'm going to try to reduce this. It is going to force this mouth closed. I'm going to try to reduce it with Dynamesh and it's going to seal this gap, but it will more than likely give me a separate poly group so I can remove it once I've reduced the resolution. So I'm going to crank this down, take this off, and Dynamesh at a lower number. Yeah, it did not give me a separate poly group. No, I can't seem to figure out how to keep that whole, so I'm going to have to recreate it. Let me just try to do it now because I have this resurface. So I'm going to just recreate the whole loop mast, and I should be able to delete hidden. So now I have a much better surface to remesh. I'm going to try remeshing it at 10K should be fine. Still problematic. Yeah, it's just a hole, so I might just postpone the making of the crevice until after I have Z-remeshed it. So I'm going to leave that gape. I'll create it after. It might be even easier to create with the Z-remesh. So at 10K, I'm going to go without creating the hole. I'll just Z-remesh. Yeah, I didn't like that hole, but yeah, now it's a little bit easier to get rid of. It's not so bad. It's so visible that I can use the Z-remodeler brush. So I'll right click here and go poly group, single poly, and I'll just click here, and that should be fine. So I should be able to now isolate and delete hidden. And so this is the head I'm going to be using to create the expressions. I'm going to first project the detail from this original piece onto it. So first I'll turn off all this stuff. That's the lacrimal. So let me turn it all off and only leave these two elements on so I can do this projection. So I'm going to turn off color, divide, project. That was pretty quick. Do it again, divide, project. And I'll do one more. So I'll go and do a quick save first. And go divide and project. Okay, so that's enough. This is a copy of the head that's going to be used for expressions. I'll call it head expressions, and I'm going to pair it with its teeth that I duplicated, put them in a group. Call this expression 1 Hanzo AI. I'm going to put a copy of the lacrimal in there, duplicate, put it in here, but I'll put a copy of the neck in there. And I'll take the eyes, make a duplicate of it. Just drag them into the folder. Now, in preparation for the next pose I'm going to do, I'll just duplicate the folder. Just hide it. So this would be expression 2, TB Choi. Hide it. Now get started with this expression. I'll go to the lower subdivision level. I think this is something I could do without going into the transpose tool. Turn off symmetry. Use the move topological so I could There's an asymmetrical tilt in the nose. I'm gonna try to simulate that, but I'll focus on getting this smile. Make sure there's a swelling in the cheeks. Very little snout with this expression. I want to be reasonable about how thin I make it, because if I'm not going to rig it to be able to completely lose this volume, I'm not going to try to simulate that here. So I'll be reasonable with how much I thin it out and make sure it also gains volume, because it's a scrunching. Go with the same gesture, swinging gesture. I have some really interesting plans about how I'm going to rig this mouth this time around. I'm going to do something somewhat different. With her smile, when I was testing it out, I might have gone a little bit too far into the mouth. I tried to make sure the skin was sliding along the teeth, and that's happens, but I did not account for how much meat there is in the cheek, and these characters are very cheeky, so all this gaping hole here would be filled with the inside of the mouth, right? So the corner won't be that close to the teeth. There'll be a lot of meat in there. Careful about this jaw. Have to be continually careful about how much I plan to lose this volume here. In this particular expression, I'd probably end up moving teeth up. Yeah. I'm going to turn on double-sided in this mesh, so I get something filling in there. One thing I forgot to do is make sure I emphasize the volume of the cheek swelling up. Shape. And go a few levels up. Just simulate this gesture. Be a brow. Some sort of sinister smile. It's really evil looking. He is gonna have eyebrows, which will also come courtesy of the X-Gen Groom. So and kind of lost a little bit of volume in the nose. We'll bring it back. And maintain that asymmetry. And this would make this a very thick lip, but when you do stretch your lips like that, it will thin out, the volume will thin out, so I have to consider that. Thinning. This asymmetrical feel. end. It's pretty interesting. Go a few subdivision levels higher. Start polishing. Sure. Get this nasolabial fold. And get this tension line. Check this. Move this out. Yeah, he's gonna be an interesting character. I wish I could do more expressions, but I have to settle on just a slight number. Yeah, it's gonna work. I need to try to tone down the symmetry. It looks really symmetrical. Let's not go. Yeah, the teeth kind of work. I thought they were really gonna look bad. I don't know why. This is a very sinister looking pose. So. I'm gonna show both teeth. I'm gonna show both teeth. Things feel really aggressive. And by that I mean when you show the top and bottom teeth, it's indicative of aggression. So I'm gonna fix these lines. It's feeling good. Lost something here. This hook. And really, I would have a lot more volume here. Kind of lost the volume a little bit. Push this a little bit more. Try to capture the shape exactly as is, because I like it. Closing the shape helps. Oh. Yeah, I'd have to be very careful with this volume. Unfortunately, I won't make it so that this volume is that easily collapsible, because I have to justify why it would be so thin. It's a huge snout, and it just can't disappear. So that's something I'll keep in mind for the rig. I'll make it so I can push it, but not so much that it just completely disappears. And even if I do push it, I have to find a way to use maybe morph targets to hold the volume or increase the volume so that it's indicative of a squash. Right? The volume just can't disappear. So I'll keep that in mind. Otherwise, the character just goes off model completely, and you're wondering where this big snout, upper snout, just disappeared to. So that's something I'll keep in mind. And I think another thing I forgot to emphasize was what happens here when you raise your cheek like that much. It won't be so much on this side, but definitely here. All that meat has to bundle up. It can't just disappear. Fair amount of it here too. Just not too much. You could do it with the fleshier material. Okay, so I think that's it for this expression. The teeth worked out pretty well. For me, the profile is not as impressive. But maybe I'm expecting too much from this type of head design. Feels a little weird that this isn't going in this direction. I mean, for a brows, you have like, feels good to have these gestures radiating forward like this. So, do that one. Alright, I think that's it for this test, this expression test. I'm going to save it so that I can go do the painting in Photoshop so I can see what it's going to look like with the final elements in there. I shaded the eyes, the teeth, and the gums with toy plastic, this material over there. And I gave the gums a red color. And I've done a few renders, a few BPR renders. I'll do the exact same thing for the next pose we're going to do so you can see exactly what I did. Okay, getting started with the second one. Start by to turn on teeth. Eyes are looking at the corner and turn off symmetry. Center pivot. Actually, to make this a little easier, I'm going to split the eyes. So I'm going to lower subdivision level, split hidden. Center pivot here, and rotate the eye to be looking to the side. I'm going to make the pose work in all views. Symmetry. This. That's a little wrong. I'm going to rotate it just a bit so that it's not completely obscured. And I'll have to shoot at a more perspective angle for the final. I'm going to put the brows of worry. I think there would be a furrowing here too. Really spread the jaw wide open. I'll turn off perspective so I can select the jaw. Select that small piece comfortably. Yeah, I think I got it. I'll go up a subdivision level and blur so the blur isn't so intense. Actually, let me go back. I need to select. Turn on symmetry. Get a good amount of the jaw. And then blur. Invert. Swivel from really up here. This is gonna be the swivel point. It's not at the corner of the jaw. And a nice wide open. Turn on double. So you can see the inside of the mouth. Start repairing this to get the shape I want. Subdivision level so I can get less geometry to play with. I'm actually gonna make this asymmetrical since it's really gonna work more so from this angle. Open it separately. And the bottom teeth, let me auto group first so I can isolate each of these pieces. I'll take the tongue too. Mask this and solo. And move the bottom teeth down. They're not be in view at all, but well, actually they will be in 3D. I'm not gonna get away with just hiding them. I'm gonna respect the thickness of the lips too, even though I don't have access to them here. and exaggerate that. See how much. I'm gonna make this be symmetrical. It's gonna be something like that. And the tongue has a more interesting shape than. I'll just bring it out a little bit. No, look at the tongue. So bring it out a little bit. Actually, let me just. Arch it a bit. I'm actually going to keep it hidden so I can isolate the tongue. And position it. It's a fairly big tongue. Just to get it out the way. And another thing I'm missing is the overall gesture of the head, which I'm going to do with Transpose Master. I'm going to pick a more interesting shape for the tongue here. Let's see here. Something about the snout that I also want to. Alright, let me go into Transpose Master and go to Transpose Master T-Pose Mesh. And one of the first things I'm going to do is tilt the head upward. It's needed to sell the expression. Tilt the head up. Go Z plugin, T-Pose subtract to send it back. This should be a control that I'll provide for this rake. I should be able to hike up the nose just to get that same gesture that she has. So, should be able to play with it like that and hike it up. Okay. Then I think I have to exaggerate this cape. And one of the things that makes this work is you have to sell. Oh, I'm gonna push that a little bit too far back. There's a certain hook that has to be sold from this angle. And this shape to make sure it's correct, without completely losing the volume of the top snout. Make sure. Another thing that sells the gesture is, let me delete that T-pose and do another one. is the jutting. It's the forward lean. There's a lean that helps to sell it. So that means to go Z plug in, T-pose mesh. And lean the head, lean the neck forward. It would really be an entire chest lean forward. So I could just rotate the entire thing forward like so. And then get the to rotate up a bit more. Okay, so get the forward lean. Can I go Z plug in, T-pose subtract. Start polishing the shape. Really should be going on to higher subdivision levels right now. This tongue doesn't look as, shape doesn't look as cool from this angle, but I got it. All right, let me increase this. Start worrying about selling this gesture. This line. Is important. This is a furrow, so I'm gonna try to put, I think, try 2. Yeah, try a line like that. Sure this is correct. Is a C shape. I can make it an S. S also works. This gesture has to change to support this line. Nasolabial line has to change to support the direction, or sort of like this curve, the mouth curve. Helps it look better. And this corner is needed to sell really sharp. Corner. See if I can get it on the lowest subdivision level, and then fix it as it goes up. And do the same thing with this smile line. It needs to support what doing with these. Line. A little bit. Get it from the underside. Do the necessary fixes. Make sure I have good quality line in all angles. Yeah, again, make sure that this volume, and make it smaller, it has to bulge, because the volume just can't disappear. There's something I want to do with the ears to an asymmetrical feel. I'll start with that one. Let's see how good the ear looks like when it's truly deformed to pose. Okay. Let me see what it feels like. This is something I pose I did a lot at the concepting stage. I want to see if it's really gonna work. I think this one needs to lean a bit more forward. See if I get a nice clean break here. Ears are just trying to make them echo the emotion or worry. Each one of them. Yeah, I might want to get the other side too. Maybe not. I like this really cool asymmetrical feel from the front view. Just wanted to work from this angle too. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to bring it down. It doesn't feel cohesive. Feels like one ear is emoting something and the other one is emoting more so shock. So that's something I'll have to be really careful with when posing this thing. Ears are so big, they're going to contribute heavily to the emotion, unlike hers. They're not as huge, so you can get away with playing around with them or not even doing much to them. But his ears, they have to echo the same emotion. This is going to be the more than likely the final pose. I'm gonna final camera view, staging choice. I'm going to finesse this for the camera so that it works really well at this pose. And it's like this really dynamic feel to it now. It feels cool. Works a lot better from the front view than it does in this view. Yeah, definitely gonna rig this with a ribbon system because it's just a simple FK system is just not gonna do. Get a really good ribbon system to have control over the whole thing. Like this angle for the pose, which is exactly what we have in the reference. But the ears, I like what they look like on the front, so I'm going to see if I can spin the ears. So I'm going to spin the ears. They look amazing from here. Alright, I'm gonna spin them. Grab this. Grow mask. Sharpen. Grow mask. Sharpen. Grow mask. And for this view, I'm going to spin them till I get I have encapsulated too much. Skull. Which is good because it lets me know the limits that I'm going to be able to push as these ears are being posed. How much twisting can I do from the base? Let's see what this feels like. Tab to zoom out and establish this as my angle. by going store camera, I could clean up these furrowed eyebrows a bit. Well, they look a mess. I'm going to emphasize this line. It's going to be really interesting to see how I can achieve interesting furrowing like this around here with all the fur that's going to be, well, the fur over there isn't going to be as much, but still I want to make sure I'm not that things like this, like lines and creases like this, are not obscured. This furrowing is more than likely going to be achieved with a morph target. Okay, yeah, it's not bad. Yep, character's face is gonna work. I should have left a little cushion for the cheek fur that I'm going to sculpt in Photoshop. So I'm gonna make sure I move this a little like that, so I have just enough to. It is going to be receding into the screen though, so. Alright, let me shade some of these elements like I did the last one, so you can see what's going on. I'm going to grab the eye, pick toy plastic, and shade it pure white. Go fill object, fill object. I'll do the same for the teeth solo. Hide the gums and go fill object, and on vert, and then for the gums I'll go with a redder color and go fill object, and on solo, and take my color back. Yeah, it looks really nice. The teeth are working really well. All right, and I'll make it so that I can size them up, especially this here, just so I can play around and get different sizes. Yeah, it's not bad at all. And if I was to pick skin shade, yeah, it's really cool. And my other favorite, matte cap pearl. Yeah, so this is not bad. I'm gonna render these and then come back in Photoshop so I can start painting over and see what this feels like. All right, here are the two expressions in Photoshop. The first thing I'm gonna do is the reddening of the ears, or what would be the substrate for scattering. I'm going to grab a very soft brush so I can layer it in. And really the shader is going to determine where it's going to be redder. Just the value. and get it a lot more saturated where it's gonna be more shrouded in shadow. It's gonna be more saturated. I probably want to do another. And get lighter and higher just to get this top part. And go for a more saturated value here. Okay, something like that. And I'll sample that. I might take charge of the color in Substance Painter and make sure I have a gradation like this, but it might also be up to what the subsurface scattering shader decides to do. Well, I could take charge of that too, but I'll see what looks good. Whether this grade, I think this gradient will look really nice. The next thing I'm gonna do is get a more brushless gradient and just see what these eyes are gonna feel like. I'll do maybe some more sinister amber eyes here. And the bottom, actually, let me go back to this and make sure I'm getting the right size. And the eyes as a mask to start painting the rest of it. So I'm going to get a dark outer rim with a softer brush. Didn't give her this much attention, and not fair. But and the top is a little darker, and then I'll pick a brighter hue at the bottom. This is typically how eyes turn out. And then I'll just put a pupil in there. There. It helps. Super crazy expression. I have to put a highlight in there. Looks like this one may have to be a little larger. The screen out. Just make it a little larger. Group it and just paint in the mask to hide part of it that's bleeding over. And I'm going to set this to a overlay to paint the white of the eye. Yeah, I should have done all this in ZBrush. That's on top, so I have to be careful. So I can bring it down here. I'm going to do a more redder color or pinker color for the lacrimal. Next I'm going to get this nose, the browner color. See if that works. Actually it should be as dark as possible. Make that a multiply. It's usually a pink color though, but yeah, I might go with a pink. I'm gonna change this by going solid color. Go with a more pinkish color. Put it on top there. Yeah. Paint it here too. Should be doing both sides at the same time. So I'll do these eyes. I'll just do these eyes a lot quicker. I'm gonna paint some of this stuff here. The white of the eye. On the overlay layer. And temporarily hide it so I can see where the eyeballs are. And paint this one with a blue. And do the same thing, use it as a mask to paint a more saturated rim with a gradient. And have like a brighter bottom. Layer, create the pupil. Okay, and then create the highlight. It's pure white. this back on. Make sure I have that same hue for the lacrimal. Alright, so those are the basic things that need to go in, and now I'm going to focus on the most important thing, which is the fur. Reduce the opacity of this so that it's not so pure white, and some of the foam from underneath shines through. Alright, I did some organization over here because things are going to get really messy really quickly if I don't do that. I'm going to get the eyebrows. I'm thinking the color of the nose might need to change. Get a solid brush. It won't be this solid. It'll be an X-Gen groom. So it would look more like a eyebrow that is more realistic. For here, I'm just going to use a solid color. Might feather it afterwards. Actually, I'm going to try to simulate exactly something closer to what I will be getting. So. I want to come as close to what I'm going to be dealing with in 3D. I made the top of his eyes darker. And there's another thing that I might have forgotten. Here, when you're dealing with eyes, set this to a multiply, reduce the opacity. You always want to put like a shadow. And not do it with a solid, do it with a gradient. Just simulate the shadow that the eyelid casts. Helps sell the realism. I'm play with this nose color. I need like a lower value pink. That bright pink feels a little wrong, and I think it's only working because I'm looking at a white fur. But okay, now I'm going to start putting in the big chunks of I'm going to pick the same color and start with a solid. Probably do the initial shapes first. See. There. I'll blend these later. Shortly. Here, do the same thing. Be proper. Using the wrong color. And for our cheeks, I'm gonna separate. And then there's what of it is emanating from around. The ears. Okay, that should be enough to describe how it's going to be shooting out of there. I'll do some rough ruffles shortly. Sorry, some flyaways. Very more lightweight. Fur neck. I'll blend this later. And I think now I should change to this softer brush and start simulating like these more softer make the brush super small and just start simulating these more feathered strands. some on these outskirts. Not everywhere, just enough to sell it. Yeah, and the hue of the brows would be a lot lighter. If this was the skin color. Grayish tone like this. That might suffice. I'm going to take a really soft brush and just fade. So stop seeing so I can blend it into the torso, into everything. And I also think I should have put a little bit of this fur simulation here. Like these strands. Maybe not. Yeah, I'm gonna have to be really careful about how much fur I put over here. I just don't think it should be too much here in this region. I don't want to play with it. It has to be really thin. I think even when I look at Zootopia Grooming and other CG furry animals, they're very careful about how they litter the fur at the central part of the face where expressions really need to sell. Get a shirt in. Let me set this to maybe multiply and just get something in. This as a mask. And I'll do the same thing for this. With his eye color. Do an overlay on the teeth. stand out just a little bit more. That might be too much. Yeah, that's a lot. Tone it down a little bit, it just looked gray. I might need to be a lot more careful with these eyebrows. I'm gonna put a mask here and shave away. That looks like it's a lot older. Like his eyebrows are not really groomed. And with the way this character is dressed, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to do that. It's a more urban-like character, not older individual. So I might even need to do some really cool things like that, like some styling of the eyebrows. So might have left a few things to get some semblance of a eyelash, and his whiskers. I have to get his whiskers in there, so not too prominent, just enough. He's a male character that I don't want him to have too, can't look too effeminate. Make sure these are sitting on top of the eyes. Okay. That's enough, just one on the top. And then the whiskers, be really thin. Really light. Get his two over here. Might have made these ones a bit too thick. Okay, yep, seems to work. Okay, so this lesson wraps up the development of their bodies and heads. It's now time to start with their clothing. In the next lesson, I'm going to get started with their clothing. It's going to take about 4 lessons to get their clothing and shoes done. It's a lot of garments, and some of them are fairly complicated. Her bubble jacket is going to take a lot of work, but the most complicated piece is going to be his sneakers, his Jordans. Those are very detailed, so that will require an entire lesson. And the same may apply for her sneakers. Her sneakers might require an entire lesson too. So I'll see you in the next lesson where I get started with her clothing.